Hey folks, Joe Morris with Answers Heaven Speaks. Okay, don't go scrolling by. Don't. Don't go. Stay there, please. Stay there. Learn something. Learn something new. Um, we're doing the story of Jesus, and I've been doing it since May. Go to Answers Heaven Speaks, tap on posts, tap on videos, and you can go back all the way to the beginning of Jesus' life. So it's been a long road, but it's such an exciting story. It's just, it's better than any novel that you can pick up. I would start naming some of those, so some of the great authors, but of so many books, but they escape me right now. This one, this story beats them all. Absolutely beats them all. I also want to thank all of you who came in and have watched the Sunday, the 2 hours. It's 2 hours. Did 2 hours on Sunday, and it was on the resurrection of Jesus. And I've said it before. When we first got started on this, I would run in and I'd tell Drew, I go, "Oh my gosh, we had like 100 people that watched this." It was like, wow, exciting, because I go to a church that only has 35 members, and that's once on a Sunday for about 30 minutes for a lesson. And then it went to 200 people, and then it got to 500. Now, the reach can be large. I mean, it can be sent out to lots and lots of people, and I'm never sure who Facebook is sending this out to. And I can get a good idea of how many people watch this by the 1-minute views and then the through plays. So, Facebook sends out these numbers, these metrics, and things like that. So, yes, we've got a website, discoverintuition.com. Yes, you can go there and buy books, but that's not what we're doing this for. Marisa and I are doing this because we're told to bridge that gap between Christianity and spirituality. And if you did not watch yesterday's show, at least go back to yesterday's and go to about the 1 hour mark, 1 hour, 5-minute mark, when Marisa comes in. And I wrote to her and I said, when I was listening to you, Marisa, yesterday, I wrote this morning. I said that when I was listening to you yesterday during the live broadcast, I thought what she was telling me was kind of goofy. It was just kind of goofy because she was explaining the Morancha body as she was channeling it from Lord knows who. Jesus, I don't know. It was maybe Peter, I don't know. Could have been a seraphic angel that did it. I wasn't sure. I didn't ask her. But I went back last night, and I listened to her again, and it was phenomenal. It's just phenomenal how she explained the Morancha body. Now, the Morancha body is the body that Jesus had when he resurrected. When he resurrected, he did not resurrect his mortal body. His mortal body had been killed. And then he took on a Morancha body and somehow was able to stay on this planet. And it took a lot of universe personalities to make that happen. And he resurrected and just went through dirt, rock, ended up on top of the cave that he was buried in, of Joseph of Arimathea. And there were 20 guards there. They didn't see him. He stood up there with Gabriel and told Gabriel to go off to let Emmanuel know that everything's going fine, that he's been resurrected. But he had to have these really special, call them people, universe personalities, from all the way up where the Father is, to come down and get his body out of the tomb. And they were able to move the rock. They went in. That was the midwayers and those universe personalities. Very special. There were 7 unnamed personalities. This probably created by the Father himself, even higher than the Melchizedek order, which is like the number 1 order, number 2, number 1 order, out of Havona, which is the paradise, where the Isle of Paradise is, with the Father and the Holy Spirit and the Eternal Son. So they came down, and mixed with the midwayers, moved the rocks, which totally freaked out all the guards. All the guards, all they could see was the rock was moving, but they didn't see anybody pushing it. And so they freaked out and they ran. They ran. They ran away from the tomb. As they were running away from the tomb, Mary Magdalene was on her way to the tomb with 4 other women of her women's corps. Not necessarily the women's corps, but it was, I can't remember their names. Salome was the mother of the Zebedees. There was another woman who was the wife of a chief priest who had come to know Jesus and understand him and loved him. Anyway, there was 5 of them, and Jesus met them, and told Mary specifically, go back, tell the apostles I've arisen, and especially tell Peter. And that's where we are in the story right now, because Peter and John race off to the tomb. But oddly enough, I don't remember, but I don't think they talked to him. Because Jesus, for some reason, had to go to Galilee. But then he came back again. I'm going, how did he get there so fast? How do you get, I don't know, just by thought process, some mechanical means? Lord knows how his Marancha body got all the way up to Galilee. But he had to make a quick trip up to Galilee. Then he came back again, and he met with his earthly family who were staying in Bethany, and with the entire women's corps. There's about 25 of them. And then he meets with some Greeks, the Greek followers of his. And then he meets with a couple kids, some young kids, 2 boys who were brothers, who were shepherd boys. So I want to get as far as I can. I just, I babbled too long. And I just encourage all of you to stick around. Again, I was starting to say, I'd be so happy if we had 100 people that watched the show. Then it was 200, and then it got up to 500, then it got to 1,000, then it got up to 1,200, then it got to 1,500, then it went up to 2,000. We had nearly 7,000 people watch the show from Sunday on the resurrection. So that's a record for us. But I tell Jesus, let's get this out there as far as we can. I don't know where Facebook is sending this. I don't even know if they're sending them to the same people every day. I don't know. I don't know who they're going to. But we got a lot of young people, but we're starting to get older people coming in as well. And I think eventually my goal as far as a reach goes would be 1 million people a day. That would be fantastic. I mean, that would be fantastic. Because then I'd have something like 25,000 or 30,000 people who are watching it every day. And that would be exciting. That would be exciting. So we're going to continue with the story of this story. I'd love to show you around. I showed you around quite extensively on the Sunday. If you kind of want to get an idea of my home life here in Mexico, go back to Sunday's show, and I kind of walked around the property and showed. And I think a lot of people were interested. Because we've got people in Poland and Hungary and Israel and the United Kingdom up in England and Greenland. I mean, all these places where it's probably just freezing cold right now, and I'm walking around in 84-degree temperature and living right on the ocean here. And it was probably interesting for people so far away to see my environment. What encourages me to do this show. But every day I do this show, before I come on, I say, okay, Father, your will be done. Subordinate my will. Your will be done in my life. Take over my mouth, take over my brain, and let's just have a fun show. Let's just have a fun show. Let's just talk about Jesus. And you're never going to get this. You're never going to get this out of a Bible. You're not going to get it out of a Sunday sermon. You're not going to get the extent of his life and what he went through by just a 30-minute sermon on a Sunday morning from typically them reading from rarely from the Old Testament and usually from one of Paul's 14 epistles, which is fine. I'm getting a better sense of who Paul was and what he was doing now that we get farther along in Jesus' story. But Paul was originally was Saul, and he used to be killing the Jews, and I mean the Christians. And you're going to see even in today's show that Caiaphas, the chief priest of the Sanhedrin, that's the ruling body of the Jews for all of Palestine, and they're centered in Jerusalem. Chief priest Caiaphas is totally freaking out that people are finding out that Jesus has been resurrected, and he now wants to proclaim a death penalty on anybody who even mentions the resurrection of Jesus. Now, he's already paid off the guards. He's paid off the guards, and both the Roman guards and his guards, for leaving their post when they freaked out when they saw the stone being rolled away from the cave. And they were paid off, and they were told to tell everybody that somebody stole the body. That's it. And to this day, I mean, the Jewish faith still believes that's what happened. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. So stay here. Stay with us. This is very interesting. And especially listen to Marisa's channeling. I don't know if she'll get in today. I hope she does. But by all means, you got to listen to yesterday's. Because she talks about the physical makeup of Jesus's body, how it's the skin is different from our skin. It's a bloodless body. Apparently, he doesn't even have a heart because if he doesn't have blood, he's got nothing. I mean, why would he have a heart? A heart pumps blood. And the skin is different. It's almost like a rubbery. And Marisa goes into great detail why it is like that. Because Morancha bodies move around, and they live on different spheres and different worlds, and they all have different forms of energy. And she said it's just the same way as your electrical wiring at home. You have kind of a rubbery substance that encircles the live wires to keep them from exploding or causing fires or what have you. But it also protects from invading energy as well. So it's very interesting, very, very interesting. And I went back and did some studying today on the whole Morancha realms, and I was tempted to go back and start talking about that again, but we want to get through this. We want to get through Jesus. He's had his resurrection. He's met Mary. He's met 5 women in total at the tomb. They've run back to tell the apostles. The apostles don't believe her, except Jesus had told Mary, tell the apostles, and especially Peter. So when Peter and John hear it, they bolt. But the remaining, there were 10, because Judas, of course, had killed himself. And because they had 12, Judas killed himself. And then Thomas, he was just totally bummed out by the whole thing. And he went away. He went back over to, I think he went to Nicodemus's house. Nicodemus was also a follower of Jesus who used to be a chief priest as well. So anyway, Peter and John, they race off to the tomb. So let's get right into the story. I don't want to talk about anything secular in the world. I do that at night. I mentioned as I was walking around, I showed my little palapa downstairs. It's a thatched roof, small patio. And it's also got a little loft up in it for kids to play in or kids to sleep in. And I like to smoke my cigar down there. And I'd catch up with the news in the nighttime, late in the nighttime. And so we all catch up on the news. We all know what's going on. But right now, there's a Christ explosion that has to occur because Christians are being mutilated. I mean, they're just being killed and they're just being hated. Why does anybody hate Christians? Just because they love life? They love fairness? But as we've learned, there's a judgment period. When you die, you go through a 3-day judgment. And you have the Father. You have the Father's Spirit, the thought adjuster, that lives within you. And when you cross over, your thought adjuster is personalized. It's personalized anyway, living within you. So you have a personalized spirit living inside your body right now, along with your soul. You can also have the Holy Spirit. You can have the Spirit of truth from Christ. You have assigned angels that are with you from the seraphic order and the cherubim order. And you also have soul family members already in their Marancha self who are watching you. So we all have this team. We all have this team. And then we find out, Jesus had the same thing. But when you go up to judgment, your thought adjuster, your spirit from the Father, separates from you and stands by you and becomes your guide and also becomes your witness at your judgment as well. And we talked about what happens if you don't pass judgment. You can either be eliminated entirely, gone, your personality, your consciousness just gone, done, over with, or the soul can choose to come back to the earth, and you can call it reincarnation, call it whatever you want, but your soul comes back again, and you got to do it all over again. In fact, Peter in the channeling yesterday was saying, it's such a pain in the rear because sometimes you move up, you've got 570 lives that you have to live after this one. And Peter, who is at his 233rd level already, he said that, the first levels in the mansion worlds are, kind of boring at school and all of this other stuff. And then you get up there to maybe the third mansion world and it's like party time. I mean, it's like good times, doing everything, probably playing golf every day, surfing every day, just having a really good time. But if you decide that you want to come back to the earth and have another experience, you got to go through the training to prepare yourself. And as he said, it's pretty bad when you come back again and you're a baby pooping all over yourself. That's Peter. He says, kind of humiliating. You've already gone up there, you've already lived your life or whatever, and now you come back and now you're a baby pooping all over yourself again. So it's kind of humiliating, and it's going to take many years to start getting that connection back with God. But there's so many things that can happen. But very few people are disintegrated and gone, because the Father loves his children so much, and he loves mortal beings. And we find out that there are, just in our local universe of Jesus, of Michael, there's at least a billion inhabited planets just in our Milky Way, because it takes in the Milky Way and maybe a few more constellations outside of our constellation. But anyway, I've gone all through that. If you really want the nuts and bolts of all of that, last week I went through all of that. I went through the inhabited planets. I went through the Marancha life and what happens to us when we die and where we go, etc. And now Jesus' mortal body has died, but he's now in his Marancha body. And somehow, some way, they up there have allowed him to come in and be seen with the eyes of mortals in his Marancha body. He doesn't eat. He doesn't have any blood in his body. He tries to keep people back. People want to come up and hug him, and he's like, and then he just boop, disappears, just poof, gone, just like that. He comes in through locked doors. He comes in through walls. He just, even though he has a more mortal type body, he's got a Marancha body. So how all those secrets pan out, a lot of it is just that. It's secrets. But let's find out about the ascension. I mean, not the ascension, but his appearances. He now has these appearances before a number of people. Oh, let me turn on this light. Oh, shoot. In fact, Drew dug out a ring light that I'd had but never used, and I've been complaining that it gets too dark in here and I don't have any more light. So right now I've got a ring light right over here. I'm not going to turn my camera. And hopefully Marisa will be ready this time. It kind of aggravates me just a little bit, just as a father. Marisa is my daughter, and she's a clear channel clairvoyant. And it takes her 5 minutes just to get ready. when she's coming on and setting up and everything else. But then she comes in with some phenomenal stuff. I can't be so picky to say, oh, Marisa, why aren't you ready when it's time? Because I'm just happy when she comes in. Sometimes she just doesn't come in. She's a busy mom. She's got 2 young kids. She's got a 6-year-old turning 7 here real soon, and she's got a 5-year-old. And they can take a lot of energy out of parents. So anyway, as the 2 apostles, John and Peter, raced for Golgotha, that's the hill where the tomb is, and where actually the tomb is not. It's north of Golgotha, on a road to Syria, and over on the east side of that road where Joseph of Arimathea had cut out a 10 by 10 by 10 by 10 room right out of rock, and he allowed Jesus to be buried there in that tomb. So as the 2 apostles raced for Golgotha and the tomb of Joseph, Peter's thoughts alternated between fear and hope. He feared to meet the Master, but his hope was aroused by the story that Jesus had sent special word to him through Mary to have him come. He was half persuaded that Jesus was really alive, only half. He recalled the promise to rise on the 3rd day. And strange to relate, this promise had not occurred to him since the crucifixion, until this moment as he hurried north through Jerusalem. As John hastened out of the city, a strange ecstasy of joy and hope welled up in his soul. He was half convinced that the women really had seen the Master. They're very doubtful. They're just very doubtful. Just like Peter had disowned Jesus 3 times before the cock crowed. Remember, he denied him 3 times, and now he doesn't even believe, after he's been taught for years that he will end up dying and resurrect on the 3rd day, and now it's happening and they still don't believe. So how are these guys going to be good ambassadors of Christ, when they don't even believe? I mean, it's going to take this for them to be able to go out on their ministries. So John, being younger than Peter, outran him and arrived first at the tomb. John waited at the door and viewing the tomb, and it was just as Mary had described it. Very soon Simon Peter rushed up and, entering, saw the same empty tomb, with the grave cloths so peculiarly arranged. The grave cloths, the cloth that was over Jesus' head was folded and set down where his head was. But the linen cloth was still draped perfectly over the rock that Jesus was laid on, as if he had just disintegrated. But those personalities sped up time to get rid of the skin and the organs and everything just within moments just gone. Now there were the bones, and they needed to get the bones and then turn them into dust. They weren't going to leave the dust inside the tomb, Jesus' dust. Otherwise, it would have been saved forever, and people would have worshipped. And they had to get rid of the bones as well, because bones take a long time to disintegrate. I mean, you go dig up a cemetery plot, and you might find somebody that's 200 years old. The bones are still there. 2,000 years old could still be there. But they disintegrated those bones after opening up the tomb. And then, as they said, returned them dust to dust. Just as he was created, us mortals were created out of the elements of the earth. We go back to being part of the earth as dust. So that's what they did with his bones. So he's gone. His Morancha body has risen. His physical body has been taken after it disintegrated. And they took the bones and had them disintegrated and spread out as probably as they would if you were what's it called, cremated, and then you got dust. That's it. So that's what they did. Somehow, some way, they cremated his body in an instant, and after the flesh was gone, and the bones had become the dust. So. And when Peter had come out, John also went in and saw it all for himself. Excuse me. And then they sat down on the stone to ponder the meaning of what they had seen and heard. And while they sat there, they turned over in their minds all that had been told them about Jesus. But they could not clearly perceive what had happened. Peter at first suggested that the grave had been rifled, that enemies had stolen the body and perhaps bribed the guards. Yeah, they were bribed. But John reasoned that the grave would hardly have been left so orderly if the body had been stolen. And he also raised the question as to how the bandages happened to be left behind, and so apparently intact. And again, they both went back into the tomb more closely to examine the grave cloths. As they came out of the tomb the second time, they found Mary Magdalene had returned, and she was weeping before the entrance. I've got somebody working. Somebody's working downstairs using some kind of an electric tool, a drill or something. So I apologize for that if you can hear it. Otherwise, you're just hearing the rush of the tide. We're right over the ocean right now, so you're hearing that rush of tide instead of me having some gentle music behind me. But now we got a drill going or something like a grinder. Oh well, let's not pay attention to that. Anyway, Mary had gone to the apostles believing that Jesus had risen from the grave, but when they all refused to believe her report, she became downcast and despairing. She longed to go back near the tomb, where she thought she heard the voice of Jesus. Well, she had. Isn't that like when you see UFOs? You swear you see a UFO, but as time goes on, you think, oh my gosh, maybe I really didn't see what I really saw. And now she's questioning herself because nobody's believing her. So she thought she had heard the familiar voice of Jesus. As Mary lingered after Peter and John had gone, so they left, they inspected, they left, and Mary lingered again at the tomb. The Master again appeared to her, saying, "Be not doubting, have the courage to believe with what you have seen and heard. Now again, go back to my apostles and again tell them that I have risen, that I will appear to them, and that presently I will go before them into Galilee as I promised." Galilee? Galilee is 85 miles away? Is that where he's going to see them? The apostles in Galilee? Let's see. So Mary hurried back to the Mark home again. That was John Mark's home, is of his father, Elijah Mark, was the father. And I forgot his mom's name. Probably another Mary. There's so many Marys. Anyway, she races back to the Mark home and told the apostles she had again talked with Jesus. But they wouldn't believe her. But when Peter and John returned, they ceased to ridicule. They stopped ridiculing. And they became filled with fear and apprehension. So let me get back into now the ascensions. That was the end of the actual original resurrection and his first appearances. So let's get into the appearances now. Not yet to the apostles. That's going to come a little bit later. I don't know if we can get to it today, but let's see how the story goes. And this is appearances to the apostles and other leaders. Resurrection Sunday was a terrible day in the lives of the apostles. 10 of them spent the larger part of the day in the upper chamber behind barred doors. Again, there was 12. Judas killed himself. He tried to hang himself and then he fell off a cliff and was dashed on rocks. And then Thomas just was so upset by the whole thing, he just left. He just left his other apostles. So there were only 10 of them left up there in that upper chamber of Elijah Mark's house. Now they might have fled from Jerusalem, but they were afraid of being arrested by the agents of the Sanhedrin if they were found abroad. So I mean that was that's probably fear that's justified because the Sanhedrin wanted to get rid of all the vestiges of Jesus. Now Thomas was brooding over his troubles alone over in Bethpage, where Nicodemus was. He would have fared better had he remained with his fellow apostles, and he would have aided them to direct their discussions along more helpful lines. All day long, John upheld the idea that Jesus had risen from the dead. He recounted no less than 5 different times when the Master had affirmed he would rise again, and at least 3 times when he alluded to the 3rd day. I think he did it more times than that, but, let's go with their story. Jesus had told him 5 times, and he had alluded to the 3-day rising several times. Now, John's attitude had considerable influence on them, the apostles, especially on his brother James and on Nathanael. John would have influenced them more if he had not been the youngest member of the group. Their isolation had much to do with their troubles. John Mark kept them in touch with developments about the temple and informed them as to the many rumors gaining headway in the city. Word of mouth. They don't have cell phones in those days, but word of mouth gets around pretty fast. Boy, I had hiccups yesterday. Was it yesterday or the day before? I'm getting them again. But it did not occur to him, John, to gather up news from the different groups of believers to whom Jesus had already appeared. That was the kind of service which had heretofore been rendered by the messengers of David. David Zebedee, his younger brother, John's younger brother, headed up the messenger corps. But they were all absent on their last assignments as heralds. All of David's messengers were absent on their last assignment as heralds of the resurrection to those groups of believers who had dwelt remote from Jerusalem. And we're going to get into it. David's going to send them all off to spread the good news. For the first time in all these years, the apostles realized how much they had been dependent on David's messengers for their daily information regarding the affairs of the kingdom. All this day, Peter characteristically had vacillated emotionally between faith and doubt concerning the Master's resurrection. Peter could not get away from the sight of the grave cloths resting there in the tomb, as if the body of Jesus had just evaporated from within. But, Peter reasoned, if he has risen and can show himself to the women, why doesn't he now show himself to us, his apostles? Peter would grow sorrowful when he thought that maybe Jesus didn't come to them on account of his presence among the apostles. Remember, he denied Jesus because he had denied him that night in Annas' courtyard. And then would he cheer himself with the word brought by the women, "Go tell my apostles and Peter." But to derive encouragement from this message implied that he must believe that the women had really seen and heard the risen Master. Thus Peter alternated between faith and doubt throughout the whole day until a little after 8 o'clock, when he ventured out into the courtyard. Peter thought to remove himself from among the apostles so that he might not prevent Jesus from coming to them because of his denial of Jesus when he was being tried. Now, James Zebedee at first advocated that they all go to the tomb, and he was strongly in favor of doing something to get to the bottom of the mystery. And it was Nathanael who prevented them from going out in public in response to James's urging. So Nathanael's saying, no, they're going to arrest us. James was anxious. Peter and John had gone. And Nathanael had done this, and he did this by reminding them of Jesus' warning against unduly jeopardizing their lives at this time. I mean, if they were rounded up and jailed, they would, all that training would go for naught. Now, by noontime, Jesus had settled down with the others to watchful waiting. He said little, and he was tremendously disappointed because Jesus didn't appear to them. And he did not know of the Master's many appearances to other groups and individuals. Andrew, the oldest of the apostles and Peter's brother, Andrew did much listening this day. He was exceedingly perplexed by the situation and had more than his share of doubts. But he at least enjoyed a certain sense of freedom from responsibility for the guidance of his fellow apostles. He was always in charge of the daily activities of the apostles, and now he was relieved of that duty. Jesus had relieved him of that duty in that last night, at the time when they were having their Last Supper. He was indeed grateful that the Master had released him from the burdens of leadership before they fell upon these distracting times. And more than once during the long and weary hours of this tragic day, the only sustaining influence of the group was the frequent contribution of Nathanael's characteristic philosophic nature in his counsel. He was really the controlling influence among the 10 throughout the entire day. That was the Sunday. Never once did he express himself concerning either belief or disbelief in the Master's resurrection. But as the day wore on, he became increasingly inclined toward believing that Jesus had fulfilled his promise to rise again. Now, Simon Zelotes, the warrior of the apostles, he was a zealot, remember, when Jesus took him in as apostle, and he was ready to fight the Romans, and he was ready to fight the guards, the Jewish guards. He didn't like government at all. I think that's why I relate to him a little bit. I can't stand government. They're all just a bunch of frauds and cowards and cheats, greedy. God, maybe not all, just like Lot. Maybe there's one good politician out there somewhere. We'll see. Simon Zelotes was too much crushed to participate in the discussions. Most of the time he reclined on a couch in the corner of the room with his face to the wall. He didn't speak half a dozen times throughout the whole day. His concept of the kingdom had crashed, and he couldn't discern that the Master's resurrection could materially change the situation. His disappointment was very personal and altogether too keen to be recovered from on short notice, even in the face of such a stupendous fact as the resurrection. Strange to record, the usually inexpressive Philip did a lot of talking throughout the afternoon of this day. During the forenoon, he had little to say, but all afternoon he asked questions of the other apostles. Peter was often annoyed by Philip's questions, but the others took his inquiries good-naturedly. Philip was particularly desirous of knowing, provided Jesus had really risen from the grave, whether his body would bear the physical marks of his crucifixion. Holes in the hands, holes in the feet, a stabbing in his right side by the Roman centurion, the guard. Now Matthew was highly confused. He listened to the discussions of his fellows, but spent most of the time turning over in his mind the problem of their future finances. Regardless of Jesus' supposed resurrection, make sure I'm on the right one here. Oh my gosh, you know what? I jumped over to the apostles. Okay, we're going to pick up on Matthew tomorrow because he did have some other appearances, and I jumped over one paper too quickly. Let's get back to paper 190. Okay, so we're going to learn a little bit about what the apostles were thinking and doing, but this came after Peter and John had raced off and gone to the tomb. The resurrected Jesus now prepares to spend a short period on Urantia for the purpose of experiencing the ascending Morantia career of a mortal of the realms. Although this time of the Morantia life is to be spent on the world of his mortal incarnation, Earth, it will, however, be in all respects the counterpart of the experience of Satania. The name of the system that we're in is Satania. The experience of the Satania mortals who pass through the progressive Morantia life. Remember yesterday he had met with a whole bunch of Morantia people who literally raised a a statue of him, of Michael, visiting the Morancha halls, the resurrection halls on the first mansion world. So all this power which is inherent in Jesus, the endowment of life, and which enabled him to rise from the dead, is the very gift of eternal life, which he bestows upon kingdom believers, and which even now makes certain their resurrection from the bonds of natural death. The mortals of the realms will arise in the morning of the resurrection with the same type of transition or Morancha body that Jesus had. That's you and I. We will arise and we will have new bodies when we pass on to the other side. We won't look like ourselves, but we will have our same personality, and we're going to have our consciousness. And but we'll have new bodies made up of the elements of the spheres that encircle the first mansion world. There are many spheres that encircle that world. And then the headquarters is called Gerizim, headquarters of the system of Satania. But again, there are 100 systems. We're in one system that was headed up by Lucifer. That's called Satania. And then we're in, there are 99 more systems that make up our constellation, which is called Norlashadek. And then there are 100 constellations that make up the local universe that was created by Michael, who then became a mortal as Jesus, the babe. So when he rose from the tomb on this Sunday morning, that would be Jesus in his Morancha form. These bodies do not have circulating blood, and such beings do not partake of ordinary material food. Nevertheless, these Morancha forms are real. So they're saying we don't eat, but I think that there's... Maybe Jesus didn't eat, but I'm under the impression that we still do eat when we do go up to the first mansion world. And again, we have our personality and our consciousness. We remember everything unless we get sent back to Earth. If we get sent back to Earth, they get to wipe our memory clean. It stays with you, but and maybe under hypnosis or something like that, you might be able to dig it out. Some people are hypnotized and they go back in their lives. They realize what other lives they had lived. But for the most part, we all come down here with amnesia, and we don't remember being erected with our soul to come down here into this human life. When the various believers saw Jesus after his resurrection, they really saw him. They were not the self-deceived victims of visions or hallucinations. Abiding faith in the resurrection of Jesus was the cardinal feature of the faith of all branches of the early gospel teaching. In Jerusalem, Alexandria, Antioch, Paul comes from Antioch. That's a Greek city. In Jerusalem, Alexandria, Antioch, and Philadelphia, all the gospel teachers united in this implicit faith in the Master's resurrection. In viewing the prominent part which Mary Magdalene took in proclaiming the Master's resurrection, it should be recorded that Mary was the chief spokesman for the women's corps, as was Peter for the apostles. Mary was not chief of the women workers. That was Rebecca of Sepphoris, I believe. But she was their chief teacher and the public spokesperson. Mary had become a woman of great circumspection, so that her boldness in speaking to a man whom she considered to be the caretaker of Joseph's garden only indicates how horrified she was to find the tomb empty. We talked about that yesterday. She saw Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. And she raced up to him, asking, thinking that he was the caretaker of the garden. The tomb was in the garden of Joseph of Arimathea. She thought he was a garden caretaker and asked, where's his body? What'd you do with Jesus' body? And it wasn't until Jesus started speaking that Mary fell to her knees and realized that he was the newly created Jesus. It was the depth and agony of her love, the fullness of her devotion that caused her to forget, for a moment, the conventional restraints of a Jewish woman's approach to a strange man. Now, heralds of the resurrection. The apostles didn't want Jesus to leave them. Therefore, had they slighted all his statements about dying, along with his promises to rise again. As we'll see, I kind of started reading what's in tomorrow's lesson. Jesus is finally going to go meet with the apostles, but even so, it's taken a little while, and we will find out the different thoughts of the different apostles before Jesus actually appears to them. But he did appear to a number of other people, including his family, which I jumped over by mistake, and now we're covering it. They were not expecting the resurrection as it came, and they refused to believe until they were confronted with the compulsion of unimpeachable evidence and the absolute proof of their own experiences. When the apostles refused to believe the report of the 5 women who had represented that they had seen Jesus and talked with him, Mary Magdalene returned to the tomb, and the others went back to Joseph's house, Joseph Arimathea, where they related their experiences to his daughter and the other women. And the women believed their report when shortly after 6 o'clock on the same Sunday, the daughter of Joseph of Arimathea and the 4 women who had seen Jesus went over to the home of Nicodemus, where they related all these happenings to Joseph, also to Nicodemus, and also to David Zebedee. We jumped the gun a little bit talking about David Zebedee tomorrow, but David Zebedee headed up the messenger corps. And even them, they were willing to believe David, but they weren't necessarily believing that Jesus had resurrected. But anyway, she goes back over, Mary Magdalene goes back over to Joseph's house and meets with Nicodemus and David Zebedee and the other men there assembled. I think the other men assembled were the Greeks. Nicodemus and the others doubted, and some of the disciples that had followed Jesus around. Remember, he had chosen 70 of them from 150 way back up there in Galilee, probably a month ago in our story, maybe even longer, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago. And we're going to do it all over again, so it's going to be fun going back to his life again with now this foreknowledge. So anyway, Nicodemus and the others doubted their story, doubted that Jesus had risen from the dead. They conjectured that the Jews had removed the body. And that wouldn't make any sense, unless they took it to the burial pit so it could be eaten up by dogs or what have you. But that would be the last thing that the Jews would want to do, is to remove the body, and that would then, therefore, legitimize Jesus' resurrection. But anyway, Nicodemus is thinking that the Jews had stole the body. Joseph and David were disposed to believe the report of the women, so much so that they hurried out to inspect the tomb, and they found everything just as the women had described. The linen cloth over the burial table and the cloth that was over his head folded up as a napkin and laid down where his head had lain. And they were the last to so view the sepulchre. For the high priest sent the captain of the temple guards to the tomb at 7:30 o'clock to remove the grave cloths. The captain wrapped them all up in the linen sheet and then threw them over a nearby cliff. Now, unless somebody went and retrieved that we don't know about, that kind of kills the story of the Shroud of Turin, because the Shroud of Turin swears that they have that linen cloth that was wrapped around Jesus. But anyway, one of the captains of the guards of the Jews, the Sanhedrin, just wrapped them all up and threw them over the cliff. From the tomb, David and Joseph went immediately to the home of Elijah Mark, where they had held a conference with the 10 apostles. Elijah Mark, the father of John Mark. John Mark was the errand boy of Jesus, and that's where they had the Last Supper, up in the upper room of John Mark's house. Elijah Mark was the father. So he goes over there to, Nicodemus goes over to Elijah Mark's house, where they held a conference with the 10 apostles in the upper chamber. Only John Zebedee was disposed to believe, even faintly, that Jesus had risen from the dead. Peter had believed at first, but when he failed to find the master, fell into a grave doubting. They were all disposed to believe that the Jews had removed the body. David wouldn't argue with them, but when he left, he said, "You're the apostles. You're the apostles, and you ought to believe what Jesus had said." And he said, "I will not contend with you." David said to the apostles, "I will not contend with you. Nevertheless, I now go back to the home of Nicodemus, where I have appointed with the messengers to assemble this morning. And when they have gathered together, I will send them forth on their last mission as heralds of the Master's resurrection." This messenger corps were sort of like the Pony Express. I mean, these guys were marathon runners. They could get, between them, they could get 80 miles done in a day. One runner runs 20 miles, and the next one runs 20, and another one runs 20, whatever, or 5 or 10 miles, whatever, and pass the story, and then the messengers are just really fast. They can get, Jesus was able to get stories from Galilee while he was in Jerusalem in a day. And no, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't have any means of communication except through messengers. So David is now going back over to Nicodemus's house to meet with his messengers, and he's going to send them on out all through Palestine, proclaiming the resurrection, the body of Jesus resurrected. "Now I heard the Master say that after he should die, he would rise on the third day, and I believe him." That was David. And thus, speaking to the dejected and forlorn ambassadors of the kingdom, the apostles, this self-appointed chief of communication made intelligence and took leave of the apostles. On his way from the upper chamber, he dropped the bag of Judas, containing all the apostolic funds, into the lap of Matthew Levi. It was about 9:30 when the last of David's 26 messengers arrived at the home of Nicodemus. This is still Sunday, April 9th, AD 30. Boy, that Thursday was a long day. Friday was a long day. It went over several of these sessions. And then Friday was a long day. And then Saturday was kind of a quiet day. That was the Sabbath day of the Passover. Now Sunday is a long day in the story. And it was about 9:30. This is still in the morning, when the last of David's 26 messengers arrived at the home of Nicodemus. David promptly assembled them in the spacious courtyard and then addressed them, saying, "Men and brethren, all this time you have served me in accordance with your oath to me and to one another. And I call you to witness that I have never yet sent out false information at your hands. Now I am about to send you on your last mission as volunteer messengers of the kingdom. And in so doing, I release you from your oaths and thereby disband the messenger corps. Men, I declare to you that we have finished our work, and no more does the Master have need of mortal messengers. He has risen from the dead. He told us before they arrested him that he would die and rise again on the third day. And I have seen the tomb, and it is empty. I have talked with Mary Magdalene and 4 other women who have actually spoken with Jesus. So I now disband you, bid you farewell, and send you on your respective assignments. And the message which you shall bear to the believers is, Jesus has risen from the dead, and the tomb is empty." That was what the message was for each of those messengers to go out and spill out. And they would say it as they're going along, as they're running around. They're telling people. And they're going to the next town, and they're telling people. So word is getting out. Word's getting out. Oh, I got those silly hiccups again. Doggone it. Maybe that'll help. I might. How are we doing? Oh, no. Too much time. Taking too much time. So anyway, David sends out his messengers. Now the majority of those present endeavored to persuade David not to do this, but they couldn't influence him. They then sought to dissuade the messengers, but they would not heed the words of doubt. And so, shortly before 10 o'clock this Sunday morning, these 26 runners went forth as the first heralds of the mighty truth fact of the resurrected Jesus. And they started out on this mission as they had on so many others, in fulfillment of their oath to David Zebedee and to one another. These men had great confidence in David, and they departed on this assignment without even waiting, without even tarrying, is the term they used, to talk with those who had seen Jesus. They just took David at his word, and the majority of them believed what David had told them. And even those who somewhat doubted carried the message just as certainly and just as swiftly. The apostles, the spiritual core of the kingdom, are this day assembled in the upper chamber, where they manifest fear and express doubts, while these laymen, the fear is from getting arrested and then being put to death, just like Jesus. While these laymen, representing the first attempt at the socialization of the Master's gospel of the brotherhood of man, under the orders of their fearless and efficient leader, go forth to proclaim the risen Savior of a world and a universe, and they engage in this eventful service ere his chosen representatives are willing to believe his word or to accept the evidence of the eyewitnesses. They just don't believe. They don't believe. These 26 were dispatched to the home of Lazarus in Bethany and to all of the believer centers, from Beersheba in the south to Damascus and Sidon in the north, and from Philadelphia in the east to Alexandria in the west. When David had taken leave of his brethren, he went over to the home of Joseph for his mother. He had brought his mother down along with the mother of Jesus, Mary, and Jude, the brother, James, the brother, and Ruth, the sister, the youngest sister, all came with Mother Mary down to Lazarus' home so that they could witness the crucifixion. Only Mary, the mother, witnessed it. His two brothers and his sister did not. They stayed at Lazarus' house. So he went over to the home of Joseph for his mother, and David did. And they then went out to Bethany to join the waiting family of Jesus. David abode there in Bethany with Martha and Mary, sisters of Lazarus, who had already split. Jesus told him, get out of town, because he didn't want him to be arrested and killed either. So they're over there with Martha and Mary until after they had disposed of their earthly possessions. They had to sell their possessions. They were going to go up to Philadelphia and be with their brother Lazarus, who headed up the church up in Philadelphia, along with Abner, who was the first apostle of John the Baptist. And he accompanied them on their journey to join their brethren, their brother Lazarus, up there in Philadelphia, Martha and Mary. In about 1 week from this time, John Zebedee took Mary, the mother of Jesus, to his home in Bethsaida. Remember, Jesus was up on the cross, and he was looking down at Mary and John, and he said, behold, John, your mother, Mary. And then he said, behold, woman, your son, John. John was always kind of in charge of making sure that Mary and her family could exist with Jesus gone and not being a breadwinner. But, he had a lot of brothers and sisters, James and Jude, and Amos and Joseph. Amos had died when he was 3 years old. Joseph was there, and then the sisters were there. So anyway, in about 1 week from this time, John Zebedee we're jumping ahead a little bit, then it's coming back. But 1 week from this time, John Zebedee took Mary, the mother of Jesus, to his home in Bethsaida. James, Jesus' eldest brother, remained with his family in Jerusalem. Ruth remained at Bethany with Lazarus' sister. The rest of Jesus' family returned to Galilee. So who remained? James remained in Lazarus' house along with, with Ruth? Yeah, Ruth remained, James remained in the home of Lazarus in Bethany, along with Lazarus' sisters. The rest of Jesus' family returned to Galilee. David Zebedee left Bethany with Martha and Mary for Philadelphia early in June. Now, once again, we're in April. So this is jumping ahead a little bit, just kind of telling us what happened a little bit to these guys. And what happened was David Zebedee ended up marrying Jesus' little sister, Ruth. And then they went back up to Capernaum or Bethsaida or Nazareth. Not sure exactly what location they went to. Mary had already been displaced from Nazareth and had moved to Capernaum to be cared for a lot closer with the Zebedee family, if you remember back in the story. Okay, Jesus' appearance at Bethany. Let's do this one, then we're done for today. From the time of the Marisa resurrection, once again, he resurrected into this Marisa body. As Marisa explained, it was sort of like a rubberish type body. It's not rubber, but it was sort of rubbery. That's kind of the bodies I think we're going to have when we go on over to the other side. So from the time of the Marisa resurrection until the hour of his spirit ascension on high, Jesus made 19 separate appearances in visible form to his believers on earth. 19 appearances. Now we're not going over all 19 of these right now. We're going to be covering about 5. Don't forget, he's already been seen by Mary twice. Mary's seen him twice. He did not appear to his enemies, nor to those who could not make spiritual use of his manifestation in visible form. I'll take that back. Mary's only seen him once. She gets to see him again just before with the apostles. That'll be tomorrow. His first appearance was to the 5 women at the tomb. His second to Mary Magdalene, also at the tomb. Okay, yes, she'd been with him twice. The third appearance occurred about noon on this Sunday at Bethany, shortly after noon. Jesus' older brother James was standing in the garden of Lazarus before the empty tomb of the resurrected brother. Remember, Lazarus had been resurrected from a tomb there at their home. So now James is standing outside that tomb that Lazarus had been resurrected from. And Martha and Mary, the brother of Martha and Mary, turning over in his mind, James, the news brought to them about 1 hour previously by the messenger of David. James had always inclined to believe in his eldest brother's mission on earth, but he had long since lost contact with Jesus' work and had drifted into grave doubting regarding the later claims of the apostles that Jesus was the Messiah. The whole family was startled and well nigh confounded by the news brought by the messenger. Even as James stood before Lazarus' empty tomb, Mary Magdalene again arrived on the scene and was excitedly relating to the family her experiences of the early morning hours at the tomb of Joseph. Before she had finished, David Zebedee and his mother arrived. Ruth, of course, believed the report, and so did Jude, brother Jude, after he had talked with David and Salome. Salome is the mother of David Zebedee. In the meantime, as they took, let me get through this. I'm going to run just a few minutes over, and hopefully Marisa, I see a red light for Marisa, so we're going to get Marisa in here too. In the meantime, as they looked for James, and before they found him, while he stood there in the garden near the tomb, he became aware of a nearby presence, as if someone had touched him on the shoulder. And when he turned to look, he beheld the gradual appearance of a strange form by his side. He was too much amazed to speak and too frightened to flee. And then the strange form spoke, saying, "James, I come to call you to the service of the kingdom. Join earnest hands with your brethren and follow after me." When James heard his name spoken, he knew that it was his eldest brother, Jesus, Yeshua, who had addressed him. They all had more or less difficulty in recognizing the Marisa form of the Master, but few of them had any trouble recognizing his voice or otherwise identifying his charming personality. Yes, you get to keep your personality and you get to keep your consciousness. But they don't recognize him because he doesn't look the same. So we'll get into that about the wounds and the hands and all this other stuff. Very curious about that myself. I've read through it, but it's been a while since I actually read all the way to the end of this. We're kind of going through this together. I prepare myself a little bit before the show, but For the most part, we're all experiencing this together. So if few of them had any trouble recognizing his voice or otherwise identifying his charming personality when he once began to communicate with them. When James perceived that Jesus was addressing him, he started to fall to his knees, exclaiming, "My Father and my brother." But Jesus told him, "Stand." While he spoke with him, he bade him, requested that he stand. And they walked through the garden and talked for almost 3 minutes. Talked over experiences of former days and forecast the events of the near future. As they neared the house, Jesus said, "Farewell, James, until I greet you all together." Until I greet you all together. So James rushed into the house, even while they looked for him at Bethpage, exclaiming, "I have just seen Jesus, and I talked with him and visited with him. He is not dead. He has risen. He vanished before me, saying, 'Farewell until I greet you all together.'" He had scarcely finished speaking when Jude returned, and he retold the experience of meeting Jesus in the garden for the benefit of Jude. And they all began to believe in the resurrection of Jesus. James now announced that he would not return to Galilee. And David exclaimed, "He is seen not only by excited women, even strong-hearted men have begun to see him. And I expect to see him myself." And David did not long wait, for the fourth appearance of Jesus to mortal recognition occurred shortly before 2 o'clock, this very home of Martha and Mary, when Jesus appeared visibly before his earthly family and their friends, 20 in all. The Master appeared in the open back door, saying, just appeared in an open back door, though, saying, "Peace be upon you. Greetings to those once near me in the flesh, and fellowship for my brothers and sisters in the kingdom of heaven." "How could you doubt?" Jesus says. "Why have you lingered so long before choosing to follow the light of truth with a whole heart? Come, therefore," Jesus says, "all of you into the fellowship of the Spirit of truth in the Father's kingdom." As they began to recover from the first shock of their amazement and to move toward him as if to embrace him, he just went poof, and he vanished from their sight. They all wanted to rush off to the city to tell the doubting apostles about what had happened, but James restrained them. Mary Magdalene only was permitted to return to Joseph's house. James forbade their publishing abroad the fact of this Marisa visit because of certain things which Jesus had said to him as they conversed in the garden. But James never revealed more of his visit with the risen Master on this day at the Lazarus home in Bethany. We'll start up with at the home of Joseph tomorrow. So we went, oh my God, I went 10 minutes over. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I try to keep it to an hour. Sometimes I just talk too much and we can't get through the story. So Jesus has met with Jesus' family. He's met with his mother. He's met with his brother James. Mary Magdalene has seen him, 2 or 3 times now. And David Zebedee got to see him as well, head of the messenger court. And then we find out that about a month later, 2 months later, David Zebedee goes back to Galilee, but as the husband of Jesus' little baby sister, Ruth. So that's it for today. I think Marisa's here. Let me take a look, see if she can come in. I see a red light, so let me see if she's there. Marisa's there. I'm going to approve you. I'm going to remind you, and you really need to go to yesterday's show and listen to Marisa's channeling. You might even have to listen to it twice. I had to hear it twice to understand it, and it was just phenomenal. It's phenomenal what comes through here. Marisa gets truth from the other side, and it comes through her. You know when she's channeling because she's just really just rapid fire, no uhs or ums or anything like that. Hi Booker.
Hi.
When she's got the ums and the ahs, then she's in her own mind. But when it's rapid fire, she's coming out. She's channeling the other side. So
I don't even
anyway,
remember. I channeled yesterday.
Oh my God, you didn't even go back and listen to it? You should have listened to it.
I think I did go back and listen to it, but I still don't remember what it was because I think I was in channeling mode when I went back and listened to it.
Let me see if I can get this up a little bit. You went back and you described what the Morancha body was.
Oh, the rubber body.
Yeah, the rubber body. And then you finally realized it. And believe me, folks, I have heard Marisa so many times when we were in session or whatever, and she would go, "Why is this Gumby Jesus here?"
Yeah.
She goes, "Why am I seeing Jesus as Gumby?"
That's right. You'd be like a Gumby person. He was like all rubber, and I was like, "What the heck is
Well,
this?"
we now know that was you've been seeing Jesus in his Morancha body,
yeah,
in his Morancha self when he comes in.
it was so cool.
For you to tell.
That's why I think this stuff is so cool that it's like, oh, now I know which cord was broken. We were trying to figure out which cord broke. It's the little light on my tripod. Oh well. Okay. Anyway, so no, what's so cool about doing this and you reading like our books or you reading the Urantia book or whatever is that all the stuff that I saw or experienced like when we were doing our books and stuff, it's like everything kind of like comes together because I'm listening to you reading and then it's like I'm seeing some of the same stuff I used to see or whatever, and then just kind of all comes together. So it's really cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's making some sense here.
Make this camera a little lower.
And I kind of goofed. I jumped up over. I went from paper 189 to paper 191 by mistake. And started reading about when Jesus is going to meet with the apostles. We didn't get that far. We started finding out what the different apostles were thinking on that Sunday. But then I realized I had missed a part. So I'm a little bit behind.
I missed the very beginning of the show because we were putting the carpet in the room and I was cleaning in here and then I just went, look at who's here.
Who's here? Oh, the cat.
Kitty. Yeah, we have a cat named Kitty and a dog. We had a dog named Poochie.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot what your
kids call her Zipper. She's a medium cat though. She sees spirits. So last night, I don't usually see spirits like very often, but I think maybe since we were talking about the Morancha body and I was kind of in that layer of consciousness, I kept seeing ghosts. And I was like, oh my gosh, I keep seeing ghosts everywhere. I'd see one out of the corner of my eye and I'd be like, and it was funny because every time I'd see something, I'd like turn my head like that and she'd go, you know, cats.
Oh yeah.
She'd go, and she'd go, pew, and she'd run across the house.
Wow.
And then and then I'd see something again and she'd go, and she'd run across the house again. And then Lucky started going,
okay. Yeah, animals can see the other side. They can
definitely see something. So yeah, it was, and then last night we had a huge windstorm. There was like wind and like our palm trees were like bent to the side and it was just major weather. And it was interesting because I think after the show last night I was just in like this major being able to see like mode, and I was just seeing so much stuff last night. I wonder if that Morancha body, I wonder if that is like the reality of the world where people that do like psychedelics and stuff, what they see. I just heard that is, you know, people talk about doing like psychedelics and opening their third eye and stuff. That's the reality or the world that they're seeing. The plasmic. Oh, okay. So the rubber that I was seeing is actually the plasmic body. It's plasma, like a plasmic light body or something like that. Not blood, because blood is plasma. But
there's no blood.
But it's like a squishy. Yeah, it's like a weird squishy body. It's interesting. One thing that the guides were saying today when you were talking was, well, I wanted to ask you when Jesus said, John, this is your mom, and mom, this is your son. Was he talking about John the Baptist or John?
No, it's his apostle. Yeah, the book of Revelation is written by John. John always refers to himself as the one that Jesus loved. He would refer to himself like
Peter said.
Yeah, as the one that. But in the Bible, John refers to himself in his book of John as the one. Instead of saying me or I, he says, does he use the word I? I'm not sure. He just says, he makes reference to the one that Jesus loved. It was making reference to himself.
Yeah.
And like he would say, and the one that Jesus loves said, and he'd say something, and he was referring to himself.
What I see, what's interesting, and I've always seen this, just like I saw Paul as the Antichrist, and you'd be like, no, I don't want to hear. but it was like, and now we realize what that really means is I've always seen that John actually took on the spirit of Christ when Jesus died. So Jesus passed on, and then it's almost like the Christ body or whatever that was passed from John the Baptist onto Jesus went on to John from Revelations. And I've always seen that. And I saw it again today too, when you said something about you said something about John the Baptist, and then you said something about John. So that's why I was asking which one was which, because again, I saw it again. It was like almost like Christ went hop, hop, hop. You know, John the Baptist, Jesus, John. And it was and I asked, is that the Christ body? What is the Christ body? And they said the Christ body is a Morancha body. It's a yeah, they said it's when you get into your own body, it's like you can't die, it doesn't age, it's like set. It's like set. I mean, if you think about it, like if you think of rubber, it's a lot more durable than like fleshy skin or whatever, you know, it's going to last a lot longer. But they're saying that it's just a so music just started playing from somewhere over there for no reason. Hold on a second. That's weird. Hold on a second.
No, let it play. Let it play. It sounds good.
I don't understand where it's coming from. It's like a meditation song. That's funny. Yeah. It's like the guides turn the music on for me. But anyways, what they're saying is this curtain. What the guides are saying is that how Christ went from one to the next, that Christ continues to now jump from one person to one person to one person. Christ can be embodied in like a person, or up to like they're saying 1,000 to 10,000, 100,000 people at a time. And Christ has to enter into this world in a lower life form, like in a lower density. So Christ consciousness goes into like this rubber like thing, and then that's how it's comes into this world, and then goes into somebody, and it permeates like its wisdom and all that stuff. Person kind of teaches whatever it's there to teach, because they're saying that Christ isn't necessarily like a angelic being or anything. Christ is like I asked, is Christ Michael? And they said Michael is a Christ, but Christ is not Michael. And I said, okay, well, is Jesus Christ? And they said Jesus is a Christ. Christ is not Jesus. So
no, really Christ, the original. Well, there is the Father, the Eternal Son, and the Holy Spirit, and they all live at the. If you think of creation as vertical, they are at the very top. They are up at Havona, and they're in the Isle of Paradise, which is the center of Havona, and so the Eternal Son is the Christ, but he has created, let's call them clones of himself, which is Michael, and Michael then creates a clone of himself by somehow coming into a little baby and pooping all over himself.
I know.
And and then grows up. That's what Peter was saying yesterday. He goes, he said, I was up in the party place. I was where everything is really cool, so beautiful, that's right. And everybody's just having so much fun around, and everything. Yeah. And he said, then I had to go back to Earth.
Yeah, and it's boring and boring and boring, and then you get here and it's like, ah.
That was probably at his time during the time of Christ, that he had to come back to Earth and then become a baby of the realm, pooping all over himself. He goes, that was pretty frustrating.
They just said if you come down to Earth in your Morancha body, you'll melt because you don't have skin. Yeah. Like, you know, like rubber, like you literally melt. And that's why
the sun is very, 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 very strong here.
Yeah, they just said it would melt.
Yeah, I just found out that the light that goes on in the worlds up there around the mansion worlds, I told you I was going to do a little studying on that. Mm-hmm. They have generators on their highest peaks. Their highest peaks are something like 15,000 feet, maybe a little higher, 25,000 feet, but they're not jagged peaks. They're more like rounded mountains. And they, on the tops of those mountains, they have energy centers. And those energy centers send out high resolution up into we would call our atmosphere. And then it returns back to their planet as light. It doesn't come from the sun or anything like that. And it ranges, the temperature ranges from 70 during 70 Fahrenheit on Earth, 70 down to 50 at night when they take rest, because then they actually dim the energy, which has enough light like a full moon. So they're never in complete darkness. And so, like you said yesterday in your channeling, you said that the Morancha body, if it's going to leave that planet, and people can leave that planet. I mean, if we're on our first mansion world and in our progress or whatever, after we graduate from a certain time there, we can become visitors and we can travel around our entire system and go to different planets. They did say that the mansion world number one, does have 3 suns, but they're more like very bright stars in the sky,
Okay.
and don't generate any heat. And Jesus was saying in your channeling yesterday that you don't realize how hot our sun really is. And the Morancha body, according to you yesterday in your channeling, the Morancha body keeps the energy within them, thinking of electrical wire, has the rubber around it to keep the electricity, keep
that's right.
the energy inside, but it also acts as a barrier from any enormous energy or bright sunlight coming into them. So I thought that was phenomenal.
I need to listen to it again, because they're saying what they were showing me was I used to see like these wiggly people, you know, they would be like dancing or whatever, and they were like Gumbies, you know, dancing around. I was like, what the heck are these? And it's just, these are all entities that are here. And what they're saying is that the sun is very, very hot. Our skin is what is God. It's the God part of the system.
That's right.
We'll never find the God particle. They keep looking for the God particle. But the God particle is our skin. It's our skin. And it's what makes us us.
It's the fleshy part of our bodies.
And they said it's never, ever, ever the same. Just like a stream, Jesus says, just like a stream of water, you can stand on the shore of a stream and you can watch that stream for days on end, and you'll think you're looking at the same stream, but you never, ever will ever see all the same water passing by you at the same time. You may have the same rock where the water is rushing by, the same moss billowing with the water, but it will never, ever be that water that passed by you on that stream ever again.
Right.
Just like your skin will never be the same. In every single second of every single day, you're shedding and developing new skin. Every 7 years, you're a completely new human being.
That's right.
In regards to the skin. So what you believe you are is what you are. And the Morancha body inside is the blueprint, or the rubber-like body that you are inside. That if you were to stay there and you were to see yourself for who you truly are, you would stay looking like that forever. But you begin to perceive yourself as a different person based on someone saying, oh, you're fat, or you're heavy, or you're big boned, or you're this, or you're that. Or you look at the media and you see the real skinny girls and you think, oh, I'm huge. So this is how people get body dysmorphia and even gender dysmorphia, all these things, because the human brain is so tricky. The human brain is so manipulative that it will trick you into thinking that you're not what you really are. So in the Morancha body, it's interesting though. This is Peter. No, I'm sorry. This is John. And Rosemary's like, boo. She's like egging him on. He's like, what is her problem with me? But she says, and then she looked at me and she like laughed, because I think that she thinks he's cute, even though he's not that cute.
Yeah.
But I think she has a crush on him. But anyway, so he says it's really quite interesting indeed that, just as you said, clones. They are, the Morancha bodies are like clones. Everyone looks exactly the same. There's no hair. It's just all like a rubber body. There's no hair. It's just eyes, nose, mouth, 1 ear, not 2, and then there's 5 fingers, 5 toes, all that. So it's why only 1 ear?
Yeah, I wonder what that's all about.
They said there's been people in the past that have like gone crazy and cut their ears off because they're in the Morancha body, and they start to they get used to being in that, and then when they go into their human body, it's almost like they start getting ringing in their ears and stuff, because they've gotten used to being in that Morancha body while they're here on Earth, where they don't feel emotion. It feels very like dulled and boring. But then when they start feeling emotions and feelings, they can feel like so much coming in on the side where they don't have an ear, that they didn't Van Gogh cut his ear off?
Van Gogh cut his ear off.
Somebody else cut their ear off too. They're saying
Peter chopped off the ear, but that's
the ear
kind of a
thing.
Point,
that's right.
point of conjecture, because not all 4 of the gospel accounts say that Peter struck the ear, but only Luke said that Jesus healed the ear.
It was Mark, and Jesus healed. But I think that it has something to do with the whole fact that we only have one ear. That's weird. We only have one. You know, I have a channeling to a song a long time ago, and they said, look through the eyes, the eyes that you can see, the ear that you can hear, and the mouth in which you speak from. And we always thought it was weird that they'd say the ear in which you can hear from. Like you can only hear from one ear. You can only hear God from the right side. But so what they're saying is that going back to yesterday, what I think the reason why I was seeing ghosts is because I channeled something about people asking to see if they had more than one Morancha body like in their field. And what I asked, what is the Morancha body called in real life? And they said it's the etheric body. And I used to always see people's etheric bodies, like an etheric double is like a gingerbread man running around. So it's funny. I kept seeing today when you were talking, I kept seeing a little gingerbread man cut out of like myself and of you and of everybody watching, kind of like running around. And I was like, what is that? And they said that's the body that Jesus came back in, was his etheric double. So I think the Morancha body, anyone that's an energy healer and you know what and you know what an etheric double is, it's basically the blueprint of who we are. And like the upper etheric body of who we are, perfect health, all that. And then what we do is we fall from grace and we fall into the lower etheric body, which is like the astral body. That's the 12-story building that we were talking about yesterday. And we got ghosts and entities and attachments and all that. So they're saying if you want to gain health and gain wisdom, not necessarily wisdom, but gain health and perfect physical, like physique, ask to be brought into alignment with your blueprint, like your blueprint of what you're supposed to be. Because the only reason why we're sick is because we worry, or we have fear, we have anger, stress, all of these things where we're thinking negatively. We're creating negative things within ourselves. We're creating those realities within ourselves. And it's hard to not think negative because we beat ourselves up. I was driving today and I could hear myself talking, and I was like, do I always hear myself talking to myself? Like, I don't know if you always hear yourself talking to yourself, but today I was very aware of the fact that I was like, I'm going to go and I'm going to turn left up here. But I don't usually hear myself say that. I usually just go left. You know, but today it was almost like I was in lag time and I could hear myself talking to myself. And then I was like agreeing with myself. But then I was also repeating whatever I was saying. It was really weird. I think it was just because I was in that double, that Morancha body, like consciousness that we were in last night. So people that like talk to themselves a lot, what they're doing is they're talking to that piece of themselves. So you can ask that piece of yourself also for answers to what you need to do and where you need to go, and also, you know, things about like your health. And you can ask to bring wisdom about health and to erase negativity from you using that part of you, because everybody has one of those bodies, and in that lies perfect health and eternal living. So so anyways, John says, hear ye, bring James forward. James says, and James just came forward. He goes, there's three of them. There's one, and then there's another two behind him. And he says, not the three, James. Luke goes, not the three, James. And Luke's like this, like talking all like, you know how he talks real boisterous and he flows his arms. And Luke's going, ye, they, thou shalt. They're talking all like old, Bible talk. And then Peter goes, oh, come on, guys, give it up. And so they just start talking normal. So James says, I must bring unto thee this. The wisdom of the ages lies within your solar plexus. If you're asking questions about your life, your planet, the place in which you inhabit, ask from within your solar plexus, because you are the creator of this, and you create your entire movie, and it lies right there in your gut. This is why when you get a gut feeling, you should usually follow it. But if it's a gut feeling based on fear, this is sometimes not coming from your gut. It's coming more from your adrenaline or from your adrenals. It's coming from the root. But ask yourself this. If I was to create a movie for myself, would I be creating this? Would this be the movie that I was creating? And many people say, oh yeah, you need to go through hard times in order to get the good stuff, or you need to go through something hard so that I can learn. But the thing is that you already know. So what you're doing is you're creating hardship for yourself so that you can feel like you have to experience the hardship so that you can experience something good. And this is all based on the world's implementation of the guilt factor. And everyone works off of guilt. If kids won't listen to parents say, oh, fine, if you don't listen to me, then I guess I'm just going to get old and, I'm not going to be around someday. And the kids go, oh my gosh, I better listen to my parents now. Or something of this sort where the kids begin to feel guilty or sad or bad. So everyone has been raised with this. This is how human beings do it. This is just how it's done. And this is how the church does it with God, with Jesus. So guilt lies within individuals. And this is why we don't feel like we can have our best lives, because we feel like if we have the best life, then we feel guilty that everybody else doesn't have a best life. We feel guilty that we have something greater. We have all the money and they don't have the money. So we give it all away and then we're broke again. We go, oh, well, God just wanted me to learn how to be humble and broke so that I could, learn from this. It's like, no, this isn't it. You can have the best life. You can have the best world, the best reality, because you are the creator. And this, as of December 2019, you became a creator of a movie that is being created every single second of every single day. What the Morancha body does is it creates 3 days at a time. So each 3 days you have more of your movie that's being created that you're living in. So you almost feel as if you're living in lag time of something you've already created 3 days from now. So understand that if you don't like the way your life is, you can ask to have things recreated. You can ask God, ask Christ within, for your highest and best good, obviously, to redirect your path, to ask your soul to look at life through different eyes and to live life free from guilt. If you can ask yourself each day, ask me, this is Jesus just came in, just ask me how to live a guilt-free life. And this doesn't mean that you have to do everything perfect so you don't feel guilty. This means you don't look at others and go, oh, I feel guilty because of this, or oh, I need to do this because I feel guilty, or oh, I need to go hang out with my boyfriend because I feel guilty if I hang out with my friends, or oh, I need to go hang out with this person because I feel guilty, or I need to do this, or I need to do that. Don't do anything out of guilt. If you're doing it out of guilt, it's not the right reason. And then you in turn then fall off of your path. So guilt, fear, anger, stress, innocence, these all take you off of your soul's path, because your soul can't be in these. The soul has to be in flow, in bliss, in joy, and in patience, love, compassion, hope. All of these things is where the soul resides, where you're flowing. So understand that you are flowing down the river. You are flowing down the river, but the river, just as we said, is constantly changing, constantly moving. And just as a boat may travel with some of the water the same as you're traveling with the water, you're never, ever, ever in the same pool of water at any given time, because everything's constantly changing. So you can recreate life right now and it'll be completely different. You can recreate your health, you can create your wealth, you can recreate everything. Just don't expect everybody else to change around you. Your perception will change and that will change them too, eventually. But most likely they'll see you as the same person for the next 10 years and then they'll go, oh, when did you change? Don't depend on other people's idea of who you are to identify yourself with who you are. Just know that you're the creator of your reality. I gave you this ability. I, the creator of this reality, gave you the ability to create on a micro level and micro and a macro level, and on the grandest level of all, meaning that you are the keeper of your own soul, and you must do that soul justice. Because if you're God and you're living in this reality, why would God want to live your life the way that you have created it? We're not speaking to you or to this channel, we're talking to everyone in general. Why would God want that? So ask yourself that and say, if I was to create a movie, what would that movie be? And then set that intention. Ask me, Jesus, Michael, Emmanuel, Christ, Yeshua, any of us in this line, any of me in this line, ask me to help implement that, and then just let it be done. I bless you, dear children. I love you so dearly. Know and understand that I am proud of each and every one of you that are watching this today, that are listening to these words today, because you are bringing into your life, into your world, into your reality, Christ forgiveness, Christ compassion, Christ love, and hope, and understanding and knowing that compassion is the key to the planet's survival and happiness. Compassion is the key to everything. Just know and understand that when you look at others and they don't believe what you believe, don't think they're stupid. Don't think they're stupid. Just be glad you're not them. Be glad you're not them, and then see them through compassionate eyes, not pity eyes. And maybe try to explain to them why you think what you think. Otherwise, just let them believe what they believe and they will come to. You being angry about it just ruins your reality. I bless you, dear children, and I will see you tomorrow.
Cool.
And Saint Germain stuck his head, and I haven't seen him forever. He goes, and we bid you adieu. I haven't seen him forever.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, he's in white robes and he's got a long white beard, kind of like Merlin almost.
I wonder what he slipped in for.
He said he turned the music on.
Oh, he did?
Music's coming from it. Just the music turned on.
Wow.
He said he said that he's in charge of shifting the frequencies and the vibrations when I'm about to channel. So I guess I needed music. I'm like, where is that music you've been coming from? It's the same song over and over. It sounds like must be someone's Facebook post or something playing on repeat or something. It's funny.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's because we finished up with Jesus speaking to James in his resurrected form, his brother James.
Oh, that's
that
why
was cool.
James came in then, huh?
Yeah, that's probably why James came in. So that was good to hear that. I'm going to have to listen to it again. I get so much more. I don't know, maybe because my mind is dancing around a little bit about what I've just done and what you're trying to figure out what you're saying and everything, and also trying to pay attention to time and everything. So when I go back and listen to it again, it's like listening to it for the first time, because it's so interesting. So I'm afraid that people really need to they need to listen to your channeling.
Oh, I have it on Vimeo. Anne, I had no idea, but Anne, my assistant, she's amazing. Hi, Anne, if you're there. She actually cuts out my channeling at the end. She'll cut out our conversation, and I believe she's posting it on Vimeo. But maybe go over to Patreon. I don't know if it's on Patreon, but definitely I'll post it on my page here on Facebook today. The link over to my Vimeo. I don't know the Vimeo link or whatever. But I'll post it tomorrow, because I think that she has like a little 5 minute to 10 minute whatever clip of our channeling, and it's all like has like the words written on the bottom of the screen and stuff. It has like the closed captions and stuff.
Wow.
Because she does the video edit of that and then puts it onto one of my apps or something like that. So I'll have to get that link from her, because then people can go back and listen to the channeling, and then she also has the whole thing with me and you, and I think it's on Vimeo, but we need to put it onto YouTube. For sure, because more people go to Vimeo than, or more people go to YouTube than Vimeo. So,
all I know is when I did that 1 week of doing the horizontal instead of the vertical, so it could be good for YouTube, everything went.
It was the worst week in the world.
It was just the worst week, and I said, you know what? I don't want to be superstitious or anything, but I would much rather. I felt like I was too detached from the listener, the watcher.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe we can't get on YouTube because we're vertical. But then I've seen
We can edit it. We can just like zoom it in and like crop it. So it's just we can crop it. It just will be more pixelated. So later on, in like a year from now, and we have like 180 megapixel cameras, and it looks like you're reaching out of the camera, we'll just look like granularly or something. But at least you'll be able to hear us, and it'll be fine. It's not a big deal. We're not putting on a big production. It's just about the content, not really about. I mean, I thought about today. I was like, man, I'm gonna look back and go, why didn't I put makeup on? And I was about to put makeup on, and then you're like, oh, let's call Marisa on screen. I was like, all right, tomorrow I'll have makeup on. So
you look fine. You look fine without makeup on.
Yeah, so, I'm getting older now, so I don't really care as much anymore. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm gonna go before the kids and Jeff walk back in. I can hear the truck in the background and go get grounded.
All right.
Speaking of, when I go into channeling mode, I'm very unemotional, and the kids are all like, like, mommy, and I'm like, hi there, how's it going? It's like I'm very like detached and unemotional too, and I'm just kind of like, Jeff, just leave me alone or whatever. And I realized that last night, because they were talking about how we densify and we get boring and non-emotional. Right. So I told Jeff after I channel, I said I need to go and I need to ground myself back into like my physical body, because I realize now I'm a little bit insensitive after I channel, because I'm like a robot. Kind of like a robot. So anyways, but then when they get all crazy, I'm like, I can't handle this. And I go running out of the house. So I'm going to get grounded before they come in here and ambush me. But I'll see everybody tomorrow. Tomorrow's class, I'm going to be doing free readings for any new students that come, or anyone who hasn't been to class in 6 months. Because I want all my old people to start coming back again. So I'm going to do a free little reading and tell you who your guide is, and maybe a little message from them. And then we're going to do a meditation and healing. So anyways, if you guys want to come to class, go to discoverintuition.com. And if you can't afford it, let us know, and we'll give you the link to get in for free.
Okay, but hopefully you can come in for just a little bit before you do your show. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow for this show, and then I'll be at the class tomorrow night.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay, go get yourself grounded and give the kiddos a hug and be nice to them.
Tomorrow I'll show you how amazing the room's gonna look. Right now there's stuff everywhere, but we got white carpet in this room, and I'm getting my new furniture in here, and it's gonna look amazing. I'm super excited.
Good.
Anyways, this will be your room when you're here, so it's nice.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
All right. Okay. Well, I'll see you later, Papa. Love you, and bye, everybody. Nice to see or hear everybody. I said hi to a bunch of people in the audience, and See you tomorrow.
Good. Okay. I'll see you then. Take care.
Love you.
Love you too. Bye-bye. Okay, folks, Joe Morris here with Answers Heaven Speaks. We've just done another day day in the life of Jesus and in the afterlife of Jesus. So thank you so much for coming in. We really appreciate it. I always recommend to listen to Marissa's channeling again. Even if you want to kind of skip the story, maybe you kind of are already aware of what's going on. It's always nice to get the channel portion of this. Once again, we're bridging that gap between Christianity. I'm the Christianity, and then the spirituality, and Marissa's the spirituality. Although she believes in Christ, she believes in God. She's just not a Bible follower, and so whenever I bring up the Bible, she doesn't feel real comfortable. So she kind of lets herself out and lets God inside her, or the Father, or Jesus, and then she channels them. So we get some really, really good messages. So anyway, have yourself a good, we're going a little bit long today, but we'll continue on with the resurrection process tomorrow. And Jesus is going to be meeting with a bunch more people, and we'll get into the apostles. I had started to get into them, but it's a little bit too soon. I got my numbers mixed up. I went from 189 to 191 instead of going over to 190. So anyway, have yourself a very good evening. Thanks, everybody. Oh, I should say hi to some people in here. Of course, Marissa was in there. I always love it. Hi, Susan. Susan Savage Day. Hi, Allison. Shireen. Hi, Shireen. Allison. Yeah. Oh, Allison. Thanks, y'all. That's really cool. Thank you. Kathy Mason Yaconas, thank you for coming in. Reese, hi Reese, and anybody else in there? Sheila, hi Sheila. Allison again. Aaron, hi Aaron. And then of course Marissa. Rachel, hi Rachel. Oh my gosh, you had a bunch of people. Hi Marissa Carter. And Diane from Heasley from Australia. And Anna, hi Anna. Bonamenti, as I apologize for saying your last names. Hi Carmen Sanchez, Allison Warner again, Shireen. So good. Thanks everybody. Some of you having some conversations back and forth, but bye. Thank you for coming in today, and try to be with us every day. I suggest just if you can't come in live, just listen to it when you go to bed. And more than likely, you won't be able to hear the whole thing. You're going to fall asleep while I'm reading the story. But sometimes you might make it all the way to the end. But that's a good time to do it. And that's what I do. If I want to listen to it a second time, I usually listen to it as I'm going to sleep. And I listen to some other people too. But anyway, okay, I'm babbling. Joe Morris, Answers Heaven Speaks. You can find all the shows on Answers Heaven Speaks, and you can go back and listen to the various channelings that Marissa's done on Facebook. And we appreciate Facebook, Meta, for allowing this story to go out. They were really hardcore with us in the very beginning, but they've kind of settled in, probably got used to us by now. So anyway. Thanks again. Have yourself a great Tuesday night. And God willing, Marissa and I will be back here again tomorrow. So take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.